What is up, everyone? Survivor 50 in the hands of the fans has concluded. We have a winner. We had the whole live tribal of it all. And now it is time to end the season once and for all with the player rankings of all 24 players from this season. We will be going from the worst to the very best player from this season. Now, a lot of factors will be coming into this as to how the rankings will be going. I'll be going over like threat management, win equitability, as well as what moves were played, and in many cases for all of them, what type of moves were made against them to either to decrease their position in the game, and if so, how did they adapt? I'm also going to be going over some opinions on the players. Of course, I develop opinions. I'm a fan. And I'm going to state some of my opinions on how I like these people. And especially since it's an all-star cast, like there isn't really a dislikable person here. And going off with that again, this is an all-star cast. No matter how these rankings go, it's not like a single one of these people are actually bad at Survivor. These are just simply rankings of the best how these great players who did in this one season, and some of them unfortunately didn't do very well. But that doesn't make them a bad player because Survivor does not bring back actual bad contestants to be on an all-star cast. And with that, let's get into it. At number 24, who at the very bottom, I have our first boot of the season, who I have Jenna, our Borneo representative, everyone, from the very first season. While I don't think Jenna's initial strategy of going after 3 or even Ozzy was that bad, she wanted to go big game hunting and get out the big players first. That's what she did in her first All Star season, and it worked. I don't think the strategy itself was necessarily bad. It was just the timing. She should have waited a bit more and possibly made some allies rather than announcing her whole initial plan right from the get-go. So, it was more so the timing and possibly being on a wrong ideal ideal starting tribe that ultimately led to her end here. Now, at number 23, I have Q. Now, I will admit, when I heard Q on the cast, I saw it early boot, real quick. Chaotic player, no one can trust him. Get this man out quick. And ultimately, that did happen. It did happen. But it wasn't on his starting tribe. On his starting tribe, he actually was in a solid group of 5, and it seemed like he was actually being trusted and actually could have gone far. But the switch happened, and his game went down the toilet. And he reverted back to the old Q, causing trouble, causing chaos. And he definitely had the wrong reads in that one round where he was in the most danger, and people knew, get this man out, and they got him out. So while Q did show some growth from his prior season, it didn't take much for him to revert, and there was no way he was hiding his ginormous target coming into this game. So I don't fault him for that for too much. Now number 22. I have our first winner of the season. I have our second person voted out, Savannah. I rated Savannah at number 2 in 49. Now I have her at 22. She did go home really early, people. I'm just saying. Anyway, a lot like Jenna, I think Savannah was very much just not in a good position coming into the game on her starting tribe, as well as the fact that she was one of 2 very unknown people coming from 49 on an all-star cast where they all know each other already. So that put an immediate suspicion and target on her. And then, well, she she bluffed a bit when she went on the journey, and that resulted in people not trusting her. But like they honestly weren't going to trust her either way, as is shown. No one really wanted to align with her. They had other people that they would rather work with, and she was a very good easy target. And I think it was something that Rick Devens said. Savannah could not help but show how good of a player she truly was. They saw it, they knew it, and they decided to align with other players rather than her, and they voted her out. Next, at number 21, I'm jumping forward a little bit. I have Charlie. Now, I think Charlie was in a good position on Callow. Like, I think he did have allies. I'm a bit miffed on those early Callow standings, but I think Charlie was in a good position. And then coming to the Switch, he was still in a good position, but he did manage to ruffle some feathers with the likes of Rizzo, who he was like gunning for, as well as other players such as D, who wanted to target him. He did have allies that were in his corner, such as Jonathan, but that ultimately wasn't enough as he was sneak attacked by Rizzo D, Savannah, and Camilla. Two of them legitimately turned on him, and he was voted out in his first tribal council. Enough said. Then now at number 20, I have Angelina. I love Angelina. Not going to lie about that. One of my favorite Survivor players of all time. But I do have her at number 20, as she was not in a good position in her starting tribe, and she remained not in a good position for a while, for a bit, on her Switch tribe, on her original starting tribe. She was on the bottom. The best ally she could actually get was maybe Aubrey, but Aubrey did not want to be associated with her. She was being called chaotic and lazy. I don't know. But that was her perception. And I think if the original Vachu had gone to tribal, they would have gone for Aubrey first. But if they couldn't get Aubrey, they would have gone for Angelina. And then when the switch happened, she had a really good easy group with Christian and Mike White, two people from our David versus Goliath season, and they could also bring in Emily. That was another number for them. Then they brought in Ozzy. So they managed to protect Angelina, who was being targeted by her own OG Vatu members, Inku and Steph. But then everything changed. People from her own alliance were turning on her first and wanting to vote her out. And then those same allies then turned on Mike, who was her main protector, and they voted him out, leaving Angelina in a very vulnerable position. There was some rifts in between the groups, though. She could have snuck into one of them, but they ultimately decided to work together and just vote her out consistently, which is a big problem, big thing. These two groups would rather work together, even though there's animosity, than just work with Angelina. There has to be something said about that. Also, she couldn't go one vote without Mike White protecting her in some manner of sense. I mean, I'll give her props for surviving two other tribals before that, but still, what? And now at number 19, I have Kyle. Kyle was evacuated on day 4 for a torn Achilles tendon. There's not much to talk about. Like, it seemed based on the show he was in a very solid position in his five-person alliance, and he was in the middle of the tribe, so he wasn't in immediate danger. But he left the game with an injury. He was pulled. There's not much for me to talk about, especially since it was so early on in the game. Sorry, Kyle, but this is the best I got for you considering the circumstances. Still a great player, still a great winner though. All right, at number 18, I have Mike White. Now, start of the game, Mike seemed to be in a good position in the Hollow tribe. Again, though, we don't really know the starting positions of the Hollow tribe members, I guess. We know certain alliances, but I don't know necessarily who Mike was tied with. But anyway, then we get to swap. The game really starts for Mike, and we get the reunion of David versus Goliath. And Mike got to work really quickly. He set the pace. He was aligned with Christian, Angelina. He brought in Ozzy and Emily. Well, sort of Chris. He sort of brought in Ozzy. He brought in Christian, and Emily came with him. And he was always going to have Angelina. And he set his sights on Q to blindside Q, and it worked. It worked beautifully. He made a move. That's why he's high up on the list. But then he overplayed his hand. He saw that Angelina was in danger. Okay, we gotta shift that target onto someone else. But I think he chose the wrong person. He could have tried to get on Stephanie, who at the time was on the outs, but he got zealous and tried to make a big move on Emily, who was close with Christian. I've talked about how this move backfired on the Truest Northern podcast. I was there when it happened, and so I know this move really well. So I'm not going to get into many details on it, but essentially, it backfired. Christian was not happy how Mike approached him and made the comparisons between their prior seasons, and he turned the tides on Mike and voted him out in a plurality vote. A snipe attack that could have been avoided if Mike did not try to make a big move and either simply let Angelina go or chose to target Stephanie, who I don't believe anyone would have been opposed to voting out at that time. Next, we have Camilla, our first Blood Moon victim. Okay, I got some early call alliances. Camilla was aligned with the other women from the new era that were on Kahlo, Dee and Tiffany. They were definitely one side of the sides of that original Kahlo. Swap happened. She was still in a good position. Then she made the move with the others to get out Charlie. She was the swing vote. But she did burn Jonathan in that tribal, and it came back to bite her as the blood moon happened. We got the soul merge scene, then we got split up again. Camilla was put in a these two versus these two situation with Stephanie and Chrissy going for her, and Camilla and Tiffany were going for Chrissy, who they wanted out since their original Kahlo days, with Jonathan being the swing vote. Had Camilla not blindsided Johnson in the prior vote, well, actually, I think Johnson would have kept Chrissy either way, but still, it wouldn't have been a clear cut decision for him. It was clear Camilla was never going to be on Johnson's side, or Chrissy's, or Stephanie's, so they voted her out. Next, we have Chrissy. Yes, our first. I'm making a twist here. Our first person that made it to the jury is here now on this list. Now, The reason I have Chrissy here is because I don't think she was ever really in a good position in the game. Like, early call days, she was the main target. Switch days, she was probably on the bottom of her majority alliance. Do I think you think the actual bottom of that tribe would have targeted Chrissy? I don't know. There's definitely a possibility. I think she would have definitely been a backup plan if they couldn't get their original target out. And then Blood Moon, she was a target alongside Camilla. Was one vote away from getting voted out. She managed to get through the D vote pretty easily, but the next round she's tied with Coach, and throughout this entire game, the reason why she was a target was because she was getting on people's nerves and she wasn't getting along with many people, apart from the coaches, the Jonasons, the Stephanies, all of those people. And now that she was partnered with Coach, who was becoming a bigger target as well, it made for a quite easy consensus vote for Chrissy in that position. So she was always an option throughout the entire game with very little protection throughout it. That's why she's at number 16. Now, number 15, I have Colby Donaldson. Now, I do think Colby was actually in a really good position throughout the entire game. I don't think he was ever a real target. The main reason why Colby's in 15th place on this list is because of two reasons. One, actually, make that three reasons. One, he was a unanimous boot, 4 votes against him on his first tribal council. Two, he did make some mistakes in overplaying a bit throughout the game. Like, word got back to Suri that Colby was sort of going after her. That wasn't actually true, but Suri believed it, and that was enough for her to get people against Colby. And Suri, yeah, as you can tell, people who even though I'm willing to switch things up as far as like placements go, generally I place people who don't make the jury at least lower than people that do. If not, I think Colby would have been higher if he had made it. He was in a very good position. People liked him. Things just it just snowballed into an unfortunate elimination for Colby. If that didn't happen, I do believe he would have made it further in the game. Now, number 14, I have Genevieve, my second favorite player from this season. Genevieve, the new 3 people, getting screwed over by two not being able to keep the 2 idols she found this season, always being on a tribe with her rival in Aubrey, and then being placed on a split tribal, still with her nemesis, as well as the few allies she would have pre-game in Christian and Devons. That's some very bad fortunate luck. Apart from that luck, I do think Genevieve did play a really good game. She was in a good position on original Vatu. She carried that position over to the Switch Kahlo, and even on the Blood Moon or the Merge tribe, I don't think if it had stayed a Merge, I don't believe Genevieve would have been one of the first few out. I don't believe that. I think she would have stayed in a pretty good position. But anyway, she was always in the majority. She had many allies who were definitely protecting her. And the round she left on, the Blood Moon round, it wasn't as clear cut as the show made it out to be. I've seen interviews from both Christian and Rick stating that they were definitely open to keeping Genevieve around on two accounts. If they had known that Aubrey wasn't going to play her idol that round, they would have voted her out instead. And also, if they had known Joe was still very much against Rick and still holding on to that early beef they had in their original tribe, they would have voted out Joe instead. There were definite scenarios where they were going to keep Genevieve. It just didn't turn out that way, which is unfortunate. But anyway, still a good game. Could have been better. 14th place for Genevieve. Now at number 13, I have our last winner of the season in D. Our mayor of Ponderosa, people. I think Dee did play a good game. I think, well, she was a target of some people, well, in early Hollow, but I do think she had enough people and allies to potentially get out of that. And she did, and then during the swap, she played a big role in the Charlie blind side. I'll give her a lot of the credit for that move, along with Rizzo and even Camilla. Afterwards, that's when Dee's game started to tipsy-turvy. Her name was getting thrown out before this as well as a big target and a winner. At this point in the game, the last winner remaining in the game. And when the merge came, she got sloppy. She threw out information, and it got back to people. And by the time of the first official whole group merge vote, she was an easy target, an easy consensus for her big status, as well as her losing some trust with people and spilling their secrets. And she didn't have the capital to recover and get out of that. Still has still played a really impressive game though for a winner coming into this season with such a target on her back. Really impressive. 13th place in these rankings. At number 12, I have the Dragon Slayer Coach. Now, during the preseason interviews, it seemed like Coach had really changed. He had learned from his past mistakes. He had grown as a person, and I do believe we got to see that Coach during the beginning of the game. He was in a very good positions during his original starting tribe and then his switch tribe, where he truly was in the center of all things. There were some hiccups along the way. He definitely took offense when Ozzy in particular wasn't very okay with his actions during the opening challenge of it all. But when we got merged, that's when Coach's exterior truly broke down. He lied unnecessarily during the blood moon, and then when the D vote was happening, he went full Dragon Slayer and did not and ruffled a lot of people the wrong way. He he says that it was to corral the votes for the split vote, and that he needed some votes on Tiffany in case the Shine in the Dark played out and no one was really budging, so he had to take charge. But in doing so, he lost pretty much all the social capital he had built during all the other days that he was out there. Which, going to the next round, the duos twist, that made him and Chrissy an easy target with both of their antics on ruffling people the wrong way. And even though it was a 50-50 around that going into tribal between Zum and Aubrey and Devons, when Devins pulled out the false idol, it was enough for people to turn on Coach. So while I do commend his early adaptation, it didn't take much for him to fall back into his old habits and be the Dragon Slayer. Now, number 11, I have Stephanie. Stephanie is an interesting case where at the beginning of the game, she was in a good position on our original Vatu tribe. I don't believe anyone would turned on her. But then we get to the switch where she's in a very precarious position, first losing Q, and then seemingly on the bottom. That's at least what it should have been. But from there on, no one was ever actually targeting Stephanie, which she attributes to her social game, but I don't get it. Stephanie seemed like an easy target. They didn't go for it. I don't know why, but she was always included in the votes, even though she was aloof pretty much the whole time. And then that didn't really change going into the merge, where she did get her way on the Camilla vote. I'll give her credit for that. But from that point on, she wasn't really in most talks, I guess. She was just going along with the majority. She went along with the D vote. She went along with the Christian coach vote. She went along with the Christian vote. And then when it came to her own vote, the whole Aussie blindside plan, it was Jonathan's. It was. Stephanie wasn't even necessarily 100% on board with that. But Jonathan had more social capital and more game awareness that his name wasn't brought up when the plan was exposed and it was all placed on Stephanie, and Stephanie became this majority target. And she had no real way of defending herself unless she decided to expose Jonathan, which I do not believe she was ever going to do. But when the plan for going after Devins failed, she became an easy majority vote. So I'll give her credit for seemingly making out of precarious situations, but when it came time to save herself, she had no real options to do that. Now, number 10, I have Christian Hubicki. Christian was basically in charge of all the pre-merge tribals. He, Ozzy, and Emily went to every single one, and he was always the one making the decision. First was the Jenna vote. He wanted Jenna. Then it was Savannah. He wanted Savannah. He went along to Q vote, but he was very much impactful in that. The Mike White vote, all him. And then we get to the Angelina vote. He was in a bit of a trouble, but like when it came to him versus Angelina, people would rather work with him. So I'll give credit there. Point is, during the whole pre-merge and then going to the Blood Moon, he was always the decider. He was always in power, and it showed in the show. But when we got to the merge post Blood Moon, he basically lost all his power. He was on the bottom in the minority, along with Devins, Emily, and Aubrey. No one seemingly wanted to work with him. No one seemingly wanted to trust him. It's honestly one of the biggest heel turns of a Survivor player ever that I've seen, going from 100% of the power to basically scrapping for scraps. He was able to spread a few votes, but then when certain players such as Jonathan, Sari, and Ozzy found out that he was planning a blindside on Ozzy, they were all salivating at the mouth to get him out, and especially thanks to him losing his vote, or more accurately, having to vote for himself. That presented a perfect opportunity for them to take him out. I'll give him credit for having real control over the pre-merge, but where did all that power end up going coming into the merge? That's my question. Next, we have Ozzy at number 9. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one. People like Ozzy this season. I liked Ozzy this season, but he showed that he had not really actually changed. His moves, quote unquote, were more so directed by Suri or sometimes Christian. He was never actually able to do a single strategic game move by himself. First vote, he almost got himself voted out defending Suri. He then again with Savannah, almost happened there too. I will give him credit though that his social game sort of improved as he wasn't necessarily a big target in the post switch or even the Blood Moon or early merge, but his target then grew as people realized that Ozzy was playing a much better game than his previous outings, so he became a target from the Christian vote onwards. And again, I'm not going to I'm not going to give Ozzy credit for his strategic game because Suri was basically Jiminy Cricket for Ozzy the entire season, and whenever she wasn't there, he struggled to gain any sort of traction. He was, and then we get to his actual elimination round where he got himself voted out essentially. He was so secure and comfortable that Aubrey was so gone that he let it slip his entire game plan, and that led to his eventual elimination when Aubrey spilled the beans, and that combined with Jonathan already wanting him out to blindside him because he was at that point did have such winning equity and was playing an okay game that people were willing to blindside him there with an idol in his pocket. Should have played that idol, man. You really should have played it. Now, number 8. I have Emily. I'm going to go through Emily's game quickly. Early Sealer tried in the majority. She was always in the majority. She was always in conversation with the decisions, along with Stevens and Christian. Switch, basically same position. And she was also able to play both sides of Q and Stephanie and like the David versus Goliath trio. She ultimately decided to side with some. Mike White did try to gun for her, but she was having good. She was positioned well enough for Christian to side with her over Mike, and they blindsided him. She really was still in a very good position at that point throughout. No one was really gunning for her unless it was in conversation to like have it be a split vote between Christian or Devins. I do struggle a bit with her win equitability. Like I don't know if Emily could have won this game. I think it could have been possible if she was sitting next to the right people, but I'm not sure where win equitability would have stood if she had made it further into the game. Um, I also, it's also hard for me to believe that she was necessarily well aware, considering that her mouse got into her a lot of trouble, especially with Christian, where she would like un be she would unintentionally spill certain secrets and certain game moves that she was aware of to basically anyone that would listen. And I do believe her when she says that was unintentional, but that's still a problem. So all that combined, I have Emily at number 8. Now at number 7, I have our final 3 GOAT. And yes, I am admitting out loud that Joe was a GOAT all season long. Joe, whew, wow. Joe can claim all he wants at Final Tribal that he changed his game, but he did not change his game. And more than not, he frustrated and angered a lot of people along the way. He was difficult to work with. He he basically had no win equitability from like I I'll say like the Stephanie vote onward, like 0%. I'll give him credit for being able to not be a target, mostly because people were aware that they could bring him to the end and he'll lose. I'll also give him credit for having the right social bond with people like Jonathan Rizzo to where he was always included in the vote. People would come to him and want him to bring him into the vote. Like he was never left out of anything. But the jotation of it all, the babysitting, that's what people really had a problem with, and they had to do that because Joe was so like set in his ways so that it became a real problem to even work with him, which ultimately led him to have no equitability and be a losing finalist again in the final three. But Joe is the first ever New Era player to make it 52 full days, 2 full seasons in the New Era. So there is something to be said there. With all that said, Joe is at 7th place. At number 6, I have Rick Devens. Now, I will say Rick played really well this season. I will admit it. To be fair, I would if he had made it to like 6th or 5th or even 4th, I would have him higher than this. But he got 7th place. This was the best I could do. Rick pretty much sailed through the pre-merge, not really being a target, only being left out of one vote, and he was a main deciding factor in both the Jenna and the Savannah vote. Christian listened to him. He wanted his opinion, and he still only got his way, but still. Post Blood Moon, he was found himself sort of on the bottom. Like I feel like in those early votes, people would rather his top strategy was him rather than Christian. So that's something he wasn't on the main target on people's minds. That all changed with the double duos twist, where he found himself with Aubrey, a person from his own alliance, and he, as well as Christian Coach, ended up being the two main targets of that round. And he managed to save himself with the idol that he planted a tribal previously, which was very good strategy and forethought on his part. And it managed to get him and Aubrey out of that vote. However, since then, he had a ginormous target on his back, and considering the idol was fake, he was in a very precarious position. He was either the main target or the backup target from every vote on up until his elimination at the final 7. But I will say he put on the whole Devon's charm of it all and really played up his role in all of this, and from by the time of his elimination, he had so much win equitability that if he had made the final tribal, he would have won the game hands down, out of beating pretty much everyone except 3 from I think at that point. So the reason I have Devon's at number 6 is his high levels of win equitability, as well as the moves he was able to make while being on the bottom from the duos twist onward. So that's why I have Devon's at number 6. And now at number 5, I have Tiffany. There's really not much for me to say from Tiffany during the pre-merge. She wasn't really shown. She was in alliance with Camilla and D. That we knew about that during original Kahlo. Then she aligned with Aubrey during the switch, where she, along with Aubrey, was on the bottom. Then during Blood Moon, she was blindsided by Jonathan when Camilla was voted out. And then she was the backup target, during the D vote, where she was the person that they split on. And I saw at that point, like, Tiffany's going to go very soon, but she, from that point on, she managed to hide under the radar. She wasn't at the top of anyone's thoughts of to be eliminated, and she. It's hard for me to say that she really did much. She was sort of a number for people, and her plans from the show, at least, were shown to be sort of misguided, and they never really went through. Point of example, for a few rounds, she tried to target Rizzo because she wanted his idol gone, which I think may have been the right move, but the show did not portray it that way at all. But I will say, though, by the time of her elimination from the final 6 on, she was shown to have much win equitability from 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 there on, and that if she had gotten to the end, I think she would have had a chance. I'm not saying that she would have won outright, but she had better chances than, say, Joe or Rizzo. So all that combined, all that said, that's why I have Tiffany at number 5. At number 4, I had the person at number 1 during 49. I have the man, the myth, the legend, Riz God. Yes, he still has his nickname. Rizzo started off the game in a kind of bad spot. I don't think people would have gone after Angelina or Aubrey during original Vatu, and it seemed like he was getting himself into the majority alliance. Not the core, but the outer shell. Then, during the switch, he was a target for like the likes of Charlie and Jonathan, but he managed to get himself out of that post-switch tribe into Blood Moon by blindsiding Charlie with the help of Camilla, Dee, and Suri. Skip Blood Moon went to exile. Then, once the merge hit, that's when his idol got exposed to everyone by the likes of Dee and Emily. He managed to turn the tides on Dee, got her voted out. From that point on, Rizzo sort of laid low, hang back. A lot of this was because we got from postseason interviews that Rizzo at this point was like really sick. He was losing a lot of weight. He wasn't really able to like do much other than lay in the hammock because he would like like really not feel well at that point. So that affected his screen time, but from a strategic standpoint, he wasn't really on anyone's radar to be taken out. I mean, Chrissy wanted him gone during the doubles twist, but like no one was listening to Chrissy. So he slid through all the way to like the final 7, where Tiffany started bringing up his name to be targeted because of his idol, but that's when he went back to the whole 49 playbook and threatened to play his idol at every tribal, preventing people from voting him, and that got him to final 5. And he got to play his idol, so clean passageway to final 4. Along the way, he also managed to pull off some blindsides on like Ozzy and Suri, the people he was initially working with in his sort of Wizard of Oz alliance. And I think aligning with those people was the right move, as they held a lot of power and were able to protect him up until the point where he no longer needed them, and he knew when to cut them. From what we got from the show, it seemed like Rizzo's plan was to go to the final 3 with Joe and Jonathan, which was the correct move, as it would have been between him and Jonathan of who was going to win. I'm not 100% sure who would win that scenario, as Rizzo, in comparison to Aubrey, had a lot less win equitability than her. So it would have been a toss-up. I think Rizzo would have put on a good performance at Final Tribal, but I don't know if it would have been enough to get him the win. And with that Final 3 in mind, He definitely had a lot of his angles covered. The only one where he was not going to fire in that round was if Aubrey won, which unfortunately was what happened, and he was sent home due to fire once again. Now, number 3, I have Suri, the best to never win, playing 6 times now, and this being her last season as well. Yes, I believe her when she says that. Suri was in danger during early Sela, who was targeted by Jenna, but she managed to get out of that. And from that point on, she was basically in charge of that tribe. And then going to post switch Sela again. Rough starting point, but she managed to get into good graces with some again. They would have rather people would rather target Rizzo and Charlie over her. And then we got to Blood Moon. She was a part of that vote, getting out Colby, who she was targeting because of rumors from before the game and during the pre-merge of the game. So she did get her way there. From that point on, History was really the one behind the scenes controlling the game. She was responsible for the coach and Chrissy vote. She was in charge of the Stephanie vote, and even though she didn't want this vote to go through, she was kind of responsible for the Aussie vote. Like, she was the one protecting Aussie. She was the one in Aussie's ear, making sure he was doing the right thing. But then when she starts saying, "Yeah, you can go for Aussie, and he'll just play his idol," Aussie didn't play his idol. He went home, and that was a major shield loss for Suri, putting her in a precarious position where she still had Rizzo and Tiffany at the final 7, but then at the final 6, people were going for Tiffany. She won immunity. And people started looking at Suri to be voted out. It was between her and Aubrey to go home that round, and it was ultimately Aubrey who managed to get the votes on Suri, and for the first time ever, Suri went home because of a majority vote. Overall, Suri definitely played one of her best games. I'll admit that. Didn't get her the win because people know. No one ever forgot this during the entire season. You cannot let Suri get to the end because she will win. Everyone knows that. And that was her major problem. Now, number 2. I have the winner of the season. I have Aubrey. Aubrey Brocco, the winner of Survivor 50. I have her at number 2. A lot of other people had her lower. I have her at number 2. This is the best I can do. Now, I will say, Aubrey's pre-merge, atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Original tribe, post-switch tribe, she was on the bottom. If she had gone to tribal, she would have gone home. Maybe she played her idol. If they lost again, she would have gone home. Aubrey was always on the bottom during the entire pre-merge. She really got saved in Blood Moon because she was in a tribe with people who she could align with, in the likes of Christian and Devons. She was able to get her number 1 nemesis out in Genevieve during that round. I'll give her credit for that. But going into the merge, she was still on the bottom, especially because of her antics with her idol the round before. She got rid of her idol, but she was still a target. Devons saved her during the double duos twist with the fake idol play. From that point on, I think Aubrey did increase her standing a bit. She removed herself from the Star Trek alliance with Christian, Devons, and Emily, and got more so in the middle, working with like the Jonasons and the Ceres and all that. Do I think she was still in a good position? No, because after the Christian vote, she was in talks to be a target during the Stephanie vote. It was her, Stephanie, or Devon's going home that round, and they decided to go for Stephanie over her. However, I do think the next round is really when she started gaining traction, where she was she had the majority of responsibility for the Aussie vote, as he spilled the beans to her of his entire gameplay, and she leaked that information to Joe and Rizzo, which ultimately led to them to lean towards blindsiding Ozzy rather than doing the easy vote and going for Aubrey. From there, she really started to piece together this winning game of hers by making sure Devens would go home and then Suri would go home instead of her. From that point on, she had already laid the foundation work for Tiffany to be eliminated in fifth place. The only thing stopping her was this majority group of Rizzo, Jonathan, and Joe. Otherwise, if she had not won individual immunity, she would have gone to fire, probably against Jonathan, and probably would have lost. But she managed to get the clutch immunity win, go to final tribal with the most win equitability of the group, and she managed to win the game. Really well done. She had a great end game run. I will I docked her a lot of points for pre-merge and early merge, but she managed to get traction from the Stephanie vote onward, and she knew exactly how to present herself at Final Tribal to get the win she's wanted for 10 years now, which played a large part in her Final Tribal. And lastly, at number 1, I have our runner-up in Jonathan. I think Jonathan did play a really perfect game this season, despite what people think. Aubrey deserved her win, but Jonathan also would have deserved the win. What did I say at the beginning of the video? Video. Jonathan basically had no target on him throughout the entire game. No one brought up his name except like Christian during his elimination round, but that was never actually the plan. And he allied himself with a lot of people that were in the majority. He was the majority essentially throughout the entire game. His first tribal got blindsided with Charlie, came back, got stronger, took out Chameleon D. He lost Christian Coach, came back stronger, took out Christian. The Stephanie vote, he got caught with his pants down on the Aussie vote, but due to his social standing, people blamed Stephanie for that rather than him. They took out Stephanie instead. From that point on, Johnson was really much in charge of the game, as he was responsible for. He was okay with either Devins or Emily going. He got his way with Emily. Then he got his way with Ozzy as well, as he also had a big part in the Ozzy blind side. From there, he assisted with the Devon vote. He was the deciding factor and deciding vote in the Suri vote, as he could have gone with Aubrey or Suri. He got the immunity win at the Final Five to take out Tiffany. And then at Final Four, he won his way through fire, taking out Rizzo and going to the end with Joe and Aubrey. Johnson's Final Tribal wasn't the best, I'll admit, but we've also seen a lot worse Final Tribals from much worse players. But overall, Johnson had the social, the physical, and the strategic game this season, which he did not have during his last time out here. And I think if he had gone to the end with Joe and Rizzo instead of Aubrey, I think he could have been the millionaire, as he did have win equitability during the season, much more than Joe or Rizzo. Oh, and he improved his social and strategic game, and he made many of the moves, many of the blind sides this season with the likes of Camilla, D, Christian, Ozzy. He he, he was a Suri. All of those players, in part, were eliminated because of Jonathan. And all of that, combined with the fact that he was never targeted, never received one vote this season, makes him the best player from this season. All right, let's wrap this up. Final thoughts on the players in the season. As for the season itself, even though people aren't the biggest fans of 50 right now, personally for me, it's an all-star season, which automatically makes it better than most. And honestly, if I didn't lose my love of Survivor after watching 44, it's not going to happen now. The players, like all-star players, great. I think a lot of them played to their best of their abilities, such as like Jonathan, Sari, Rizzo, Devins. Love seeing them. While some didn't play as great, I still think this was an overall good season of Survivor. I do want to change some things how I do these videos moving forward, but other than that, things are still smooth and still going forward well. As for the final message from this season, the new open era, where basically any advantage, any twist, any idol from the past 50 seasons could be a part of any future season. It sounds intimidating. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, as someone that wants to play Survivor one day, it sounds intimidating. But again, I'm going to go into it expecting the best, expecting the worst, wanting the best, and just play how I can, and adapting to these twists that could be a part of any given season. The new era was told that it was predictable as it used basically the same format every couple seasons. From the sounds of it, the open era is going to be unpredictable, which could be good television or could fall from grace. We'll have to see. But anyway, that's a wrap on Survivor 50 in the hands of the fans. In general, the great season Survivor. I'll be back during the fall doing the same. If you let me know anything else that you would have wanted to hear or have me say, I'll always be invested in the comments down below. But anyway, until next time, Voidtune out.